Want a quick 10-minute wrap-up of the week's compliance news? Well, this is the podcast for you, 10 for 10, where Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, wraps up 10 top compliance stories which occurred over the past week. If you don't know, Tom has a daily news podcast, appropriately called the Daily Compliance News, and 10 for 10 wraps up the week. So get up on a Saturday morning, have a great cup of coffee, and check out 10 for 10, the podcast which gives you the week's top compliance news. Are you interested in upping your game in compliance through the use of AI and machine learning technology? Well, check out my latest book, Upping Your Game, How Compliance and Risk Management Move to 2030 and Beyond. You can check it out in the show notes. I've got a link to the purchase at Amazon.com. Upping Your Game. 10 for 10 for the week ending August 2, 2025. Our first story comes to us from the Wall Street Journal and reports on the continued evisceration of the Department of Justice by the Trump administration. This time, the number 2 and 3 at the DOJ were fired because they did not want to approve a merger that Trump wanted approved. And it demonstrates once again the corruption of the Department of Justice by President Trump, that they will do what he wants, not what the law requires. Our next story comes to us from the Financial Times, the first of a couple of stories today from the FT. And it is that Ukrainian oligarchs have been ordered to repay $1.9 billion over bank fraud. The former oligarch owners of Ukraine's largest bank were ordered to hand over the assets by England's High Court in a fraud case that had become a test of Ukraine's commitment to tackling corruption. The two owners of private bank, until it was nationalized, were jointly and severally found liable for losses for fraudulent lending that caused the bank's collapse. The ruling is a victory for the bank itself, which waged an 8-year battle to recover the money. Of course, whether they'll actually ever recover it is a open question. Our second story today from the FT is about Bain & Company. If you don't think corruption will kill your business, Bain & Company has had to shut down its business in South Africa, where it was a part of the corruption scandal of former President Zuma, and it has struggled to, quote, shake off the stigma, end quote, of its corruption. Gee, I wonder why that happened. Bain said it was winding down its operations and would redeploy the assets. The difficulties created for the firm by its participation in bribery and corruption have been well documented, and it just demonstrates that sometimes you just can't come back when you engage in that. Next up from the New York Times, Alvaro Uribe, Colombia's conservative former president who shaped the country's politics for more than 25 years, was found guilty of bribery this past week. It was the first major conviction of a former Colombian leader. He was accused of working with a lawyer in an unsuccessful effort to bribe a former paramilitary to retract testimony that damaged him. The paramilitary person said that Uribe founded and financed a paramilitary group, and Uribe tried to change his testimony. It didn't work. Next from Bloomberg, a really interesting story about insider trading and a long game played by a criminal gang in France. And a novel twist on insider trading probes, French authorities are investigating a network that allegedly tried to court elite university students and junior bankers, banking that one day they'd land top jobs and hand over market-moving intelligence. Turns out one of those students later worked for Rothschild on a secret $2 billion plan by Bernard Arnault to delist Christian Dior, a deal that never surfaced but triggered suspicious trades in Paris, Dubai, and New York. Authorities said the relationship between the alleged tipster and network began when he was recruited years previously out of university. So that is certainly playing the long game. I've seen a few TV shows and read a couple of books that where this happened, but it's the first time we've really seen it publicized in the news. Next up from Reuters in a story about big tech and EU and how they cannot seem to get regulatory concerns correct. Italy's antitrust authority said on Wednesday it had launched an investigation into Meta's platforms over allegations the company abused its dominant position by installing artificial intelligence tool on its messaging service WhatsApp. The watchdog said Meta may have violated EU competition laws by integrating its Meta AI assistant into WhatsApp without user consent, a move that could certainly harm competitors and probably consumers as well. The company said it was cooperating, unlike Twitter, which apparently is not cooperating in France. But you just have to wonder, why is big tech being hammered by the EU? You would think that get a bunch of lawyers and get all of this figured out, but maybe not. Next up, from Bloomberg. Everyone knows about Coldplay and the imbroglio around the former CEO of Astronomer. Well, now Albertsons, who tried to merge with Kroger and it fell apart, and now, of course, there's litigation over this, wants personal conduct details on Kroger's ex-CEO. The reason? He was resigned to pursue other opportunities abruptly during the failed merger. And Albertsons attorneys want to know what his business ethics or lack thereof did to torpedo the transaction. So this is an interesting development. I must say I'm not quite sure whether I'm on the fence on this one or not, but if you're a CEO, just expect everything you do is going to be public. What is corruption? The New York Times explores this in an article about the Russian-Ukraine war. And Russian authorities are increasingly pursuing corruption cases against regional and military officers after battlefield failures. Now, one school of thought that says this is aimed at quelling public anger about battlefield failures, but government officials in 3 of the 5 Russian regions bordering Ukraine have been arrested and accused by prosecutors of embezzling funds earmarked for border fortifications. And that is, of course, why Ukraine is so successful. Now, corruption is endemic in Russia. It's endemic in the Putin government. It's endemic in the army. So no surprise that there's potential corruption there. And, of course, early in the war, the Russian army discovered that its supplies had been gutted by sales by officers, so men didn't have the basic necessities to conduct a war. But now we have a new front and a corruption front open. And if Russia's going to go down this road, it's going to be a long road to hoe in terms of trying to determine the corruption and the Russian government and army. From Deadline, Elizabeth Warren says the Skydance Paramount merger approval must be investigated for criminal behavior. So what's going to happen under a new administration when a new SEC or new DOJ looks back on this? We have explored this issue, I think, before, and it appears it could look like that the payment by Paramount to settle a bogus lawsuit by President Trump could be considered a bribe. Now, I'm sure the Paramount board had their team of lawyers take this into consideration, but she wants to look at it. And our final story comes to us again from the Financial Times, which reports that the head abbot at the Shaolin Temple in Beijing, the biggest Shaolin temple in the world, and certainly the most well-known, is under arrest for corruption. David Carradine and his character Grasshopper are probably turning over in their grave. Have a great weekend. This is Tom Fox again. 10 for 10 is a special production of the Compliance Podcast Network. I'd also urge you to check out the Daily Compliance News, which posts every week from Monday to Friday, where I give 4 curated stories of bribery, corruption, and compliance events that will allow you to help you start your day as well. So check out the Daily Compliance News and subscribe or rate and review to both 10 for 10 and the Daily Compliance News. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of 10 for 10. I hope you'll check out the newest podcast in the Compliance Podcast Network, the Compliance Tip of the Day. In Compliance Tip of the Day, I give a 5 to 8 minute summary of one tip that you can integrate into your compliance program or put together for greater compliance program efficiency. Finally, if you're a Sherlock Holmes fan, I am preparing a new season of Adventures in Compliance where I go through the 4 novels of Sherlock Holmes. Hear it on the Compliance Podcast Network.